All right, so the next thing that I want to do is take a look at Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 1. And as a reminder, show you how this is an unhelpful way to imagine the beginning of a chapter because it's the last words of Habakkuk's second line of argumentation and complaint. So there is a indention in the text, in the Masoretic text of the Leningrad Codex, where the manuscripts are based on. But that doesn't mean that this is necessarily a good place to begin a chapter, right? There are other reasons why they may or may not indent a text visually. Um, and so it's in Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2, where God begins to respond. And there are a couple of interesting Hebrew language insights I want to show you here, because I know many of you, this is what you're most interested in Habakkuk chapter 2. We have famous verses about writing the vision and also about how the righteous shall live by faith. So we're just going to take some of these one at a time. And the first thing that I want to talk about is how there's some covenant language undertones to Habakkuk chapter 2 with what God has to say. When he talks about writing the vision and making it plain on tablets, this word for make it plain and this word for tablets both have very clear covenant connections, because the word for to make it plain, this word only appears a few times in the entire Hebrew Bible. In fact, it only appears 3 times. And the other two instances appear in Deuteronomy 1:5 as well as Deuteronomy 27:8. And both of these verses have to do with the giving of the Torah, the explaining of the Torah to the people. Deuteronomy 1, verse 5 is the beginning of Moses, the second kind of giving of the Torah to a new generation. And Deuteronomy 27:8 is another instance where, as this new generation is about to be going in the promised land, it kind of gives them a rubric of some things they're supposed to do when they get there to kind of renew the covenant on a regular basis. So before we look at Deuteronomy 27, I also want to address the word tablets, luach or luchot. And this is also used in the Bible to refer to writing things of the covenant on tablets. So we look at Deuteronomy 27, verses 1 through 8. Here's what it says. Now Moses and the elders of Israel commanded the people, saying, keep the whole commandment that I command you today. And on the day you cross over the Jordan to the land that the Lord your God is giving you, you shall set up large stones and plaster them with plaster. And you shall write on them all the words of this law or of this Torah when you cross over to enter the land that the Lord your God is giving you, a land flowing with milk and honey, as the Lord, the God of your fathers, has promised you. So this is the first instance where we see this idea of writing things on stone, the words of the Torah. And so there's already been the words of Torah written, but this is to play an important role in the continuing commitment of the covenant community to God, is that there are different times where the covenant is to be written down again and read and heard again, and to make sure people follow. And then verse 4, and when you've crossed over the Jordan, you shall set up 3 stones concerning which I command you today on Mount Ebal, and you shall plaster them with plaster. And there you shall build an altar to the Lord your God, an altar of stones. You shall wield no iron tool on them. You shall build an altar to the Lord your God of uncut stones, and you shall offer burnt offerings on it to the Lord your God. And you shall sacrifice peace offerings, and you shall eat there, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God. And then finally, verse 8, and you shall write on the stones all the words of this law very plainly. In Hebrew, v'chatavta al ha'avanim et kol divrei haTorah hazot ba'er hetev. So again, this word for stone is not the word for tablet, but we see that word tablet in other places, like writing on tablets, the 10 words, or also known as the 10 commandments. But you're going to write on stone, the stones, the words of this Torah, ba'er, plainly, clearly. So when Habakkuk is speaking, and he's talking about writing on tablets and doing it plainly, this is eliciting covenant language from Exodus, especially Exodus through Deuteronomy. And so it makes probably Habakkuk and his audience think about the idea that God is a covenant with these people. So there's a lot of directions we could go there with. I'd probably love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about what would it mean for the people, for Habakkuk the prophet and the people he gives this message to in a time period before exile, as well as people reflecting on this message during and after the exile. What does it mean that there's connections to the Torah, particularly Exodus through Deuteronomy, quite heavily? How might that impact this message? On a simpler level, though, too, note that the idea of writing something on a tablet, that's a very much, very enduring way and permanent way to write something down. And so it makes it a very sure thing what is coming. In fact, that transitions us well to another insight that I want to share from this, which is the word v'yafeach, which in the ESV, the way they translate this is hasten. Because what God goes on to say after writing on tablets and making it plain so that he may run who reads it, then says, Ki od chazon lamoed, for still the vision awaits its appointed time. Literally, for ki od, for still, chazon, vision, la is for a moed. A moed is an appointed time. And this is a word that's used in Genesis to talk about part of the purpose of the lights in the heavens, is there to help people mark appointed and special times in Scripture. But then we have v'yafeach laketz, which this word is interesting. If we look at halot, which is a great lexicon of biblical Hebrew and Aramaic, this word could come from puach one, which is related to blowing and breathing, which then kind of can get extrapolated to a few other ideas. And that's where some theorize that this Habakkuk verse means, it hastens, as in it's blowing, and and so some things maybe like blowing as in panting, like it's panting to the end, and that it's moving quickly to the end. So it kind of gets abstracted that way. But I actually think a different option makes more sense that some other scholars have mentioned. It could be related to puach tu, which one place this is attested in other Semitic languages like Ugaritic, which is a Semitic language very similar to Hebrew. Their root yafach means, it's related to the word for witness, means witness. In fact, there are many times in the Hebrew Bible where this sense of the meaning happens. And depending on your translation, it may or may not be translated that way, but we see the word puach, this verb, used in the book of Proverbs. So there are a few different verses in the book of Proverbs that attest to the idea of this root as a verb referring to witness. Proverbs 6:19 is a false witness who breathes out lies and one who sows discord among brothers. Now, this ESV translation translates yafiach here as breathes, again related to the word for blow, saying that ed shaker, which means a witness of lies or a false witness, breathes out lies. But this could be that a false witness testifies lies. I think a really good example, though, to kind of show how this makes the most sense is Proverbs 12:17. Yafiach emunah yagid tzedek ve'ed shkarim mirma. Whoever speaks the truth gives honest evidence, but a false witness utters deceit. So in this verse here, yafiach in the ESV is being translated as whoever speaks, and then emunah being a word for truth. Yagid tzedek, he will declare or he will speak righteousness, okay, righteously. V'ed, but an ed, a witness, shkarim, but a witness of lies, deceit. There's no verb technically in the second unit. It picks up the verb from the previous one. So ultimately what we have is yafiach is being used in parallel with an ed. And when we know that in Ugaritic, that yafach relates to a witness, and you have verses like this in the Bible, it makes a lot of sense that this can be a witness. So there's some other examples that you can look at in the Hebrew Bible. One more that I'm going to give is Proverbs 14:5, because it's important for ours. Ed emunim lo yechazev v'yafiach kzavim ed shaker. which is a faithful witness does not lie, but a false witness breathes out lies. But again, it can be just witness or testify. So it's especially important as we go back to Habakkuk, because you're going to notice that yafiach and kazavim, this word for lies or deceit, shows up again and again in Proverbs 14:5, 14:25, 19:5, and 19:9. Because when you look at Habakkuk, what's interesting is what's written is v'yafeach laketz, and it testifies of the end. V'lo yechazev, and it does not lie. So I think it makes a lot more sense, given the context, that there's a lot of covenant language going on here. And this is about something not lying, but something that testifies of the end. So I actually don't think that reading this as Puach 1 makes the most sense. Now, perhaps you could say, hey, this is about he may run who reads it. So Puach related to blow, and maybe abstracted to panting from going quickly. You have to make a couple steps, but maybe you see those as a stronger argument. For me, I think we have yafeach, we have deceit and lying as something it is not doing. So this being a faithful witness of the end of what's coming makes the most sense to me. But I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments below.